Hello.
Good morning.
How are you, Samer?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Great.
Jeff, thank you so much for joining us at the Furhat conference this year. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
So, um, I want to start by something that I personally find very fascinating, which is that you've been in this industry for about 4 decades. Something that I would say give you a very unique perspective of what's been happening in the world today, and the whole evolution of the idea of a robot, seeing it being used in some applications, but also how society views this concept and how it's been evolving. So yeah, looking back at those 4 decades, and seeing where the real excitement that's happening today, specifically within humanoid robotics. And what are some of the things that come to mind?
So, I got involved in about 1981 in robotics, working for the Society of Manufacturing Engineers. They had a robotics activity that broke away, became the Robotic Industries Association, and I joined that small group of people in 1983. And as early as 1984, people were talking about personal robots, and these robots were going to in some cases be of the humanoid form factor, and we were going to see them in all sorts of areas, and they were going to do amazing things. And then it didn't happen. And a lot of people, I think were surprised that it didn't happen, that we didn't have robots in our home and doing services and, elder care and all these applications that we're still talking about 4 decades
Uh,
later. Very difficult challenges. So it's really interesting for me now to see that we're coming to a point where it might happen, where there may be useful humanoid robots out there in some of these areas, healthcare, elder care, working in factories and warehouses, that might happen in my lifetime.
hmm, exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, the during my shorter tenure in this industry, I've seen also kind of the hype cycle that happens in, I would say, a lot of those technology concepts, or robotics is one of them. AI
Yeah.
in itself was had a lot of kind of excitement in the 90s, and um, so people that tend to see this hype cycle come and go maybe become a bit, or maybe there's a cynicism about when are we
Yes.
really, which one is it that's
You're
be the
right.
real breakthrough.
Yeah.
um
Honestly, it was that way with industrial robots. So when I joined again in the early 80s, it was going to be the next industrial revolution. Every company was going to be automating. And then when the automotive industry canceled a whole bunch of orders, the whole industry fell
mm,
apart. There were
mm,
all these companies manufacturing robots in the US, IBM, Westinghouse, GE, so many major US companies were involved in robotics, they all pulled out. And what was left was an industry that had to rebuild itself. And the players became primarily Japanese and European companies in industrial robots. So it's taken a long time for industrial robots to get to the point where it seems to be now, ready to accelerate into every industry, well beyond just automotive and electronics. But it's taken 4 decades to get there. Then collaborative robots, when they were first introduced,
right.
um, same thing. People thought everyone was going to have a collaborative robot. Oh, this is so great. And then people became skeptical there about, well, they don't hold enough, they're not fast enough, we just can't find use cases. And now look at what's happening with collaborative robots. You're seeing them doing things like welding and finishing. I mean, all these things that we never would have imagined. At first, it was thought of just, I just think these cycles make you skeptical, but you have to be careful of your own skepticism.
Obviously, generative AI is the big um, driver for for a lot of the excitement right now. Do you see that as kind of the real catalyst for making this hype kind of the last one, perhaps?
It's certainly possible. I mean, the demos that you see and the videos that you see are really impressive, but not not sold yet, personally. I think that
Mm.
I need to see more of the actual applications of generative AI doing useful things in a variety of environments that aren't just in a video.
There's also been a lot of skepticism about the form factor. I mean, it doesn't really need to look like a human, or um, it can look something else that's maybe even more efficient and productive depending on the
Yeah.
application. What's your view on that
This
human
is a
factor versus?
this is an interesting one, whether it needs to look like a human or not, because some people are going to find that creepy and scary. And I've seen a lot of developments over the years. There was a Chinese company who came to our Automate show once, and they had like skin that covered the robot that looked very much like a human face. And these are all over the world now. Is that what we want, or does that scare us? And in different countries, it may be a different answer. Like, for instance, in Japan, we've always talked about how culturally they view robots differently than the US. Culturally, robots were good things, good characters, whereas in the US, in many films, um, Terminator and others, robots are portrayed in a negative light. And so I don't know how people are going to react to machines that look like them and act like them and sound like them and work side by side with them. I don't know if that's going to be well received. That remains to be seen.
You just finished the one of the world's largest gathering for industrial automation conference, Automate, a
Yeah,
few weeks ago,
yeah.
right? So there's a lot of, I guess, insight into what people are talking about, what companies are working on, and how do you view the industrial automation community with this current development?
Well, I mean, I think, industrial robots are still proliferating. Collaborative robots are growing quickly. Mobile robots are growing quickly. And there is this look now to what's next. Are we going to see humanoids? We had a panel that was, standing room only panel on humanoids. And we're doing a humanoid robot forum in Memphis in October because of this interest. And also because of their skepticism, because
Mm.
people want to know if this is really something. They see all the money being invested, but they want to know if this is just another hype that has nothing behind it, as we've seen in many cases in the past, or at least delayed something behind it.
Evangelizing the concept of a humanoid robot, of it being a successful one, what would do you think would be the first commercially viable, breakthrough use case application?
Well, I mean, we're already seeing pilots in logistics, with companies like Agility Robotics. Their Digit robot is
Mm.
already in pilots, and same thing with Apptronic. Their robot is in automotive company pilots, and I think those are likely to be the places where the first big potentials. I mean, Elon Musk says he's using or is going to be using his Optimus robot humanoid in a Tesla auto plant. So that's, I think, where you're going to see the first big use cases. Um, the home, hospitals, I think those are further down the road.
There's a lot of people that are entering this, a lot of excitement by the young talent, uh, both in industry and academia, and people are really hoping that this is going to be where the future is. Um, what is your advice there, and are there any lessons that you would like people to learn?
Yeah. So I think that from my perspective, we've seen a lot of in the past and maybe in the present, um, companies developing cool technology that has no use, that has no ROI, that has no application that can, be widely adopted. And that's usually where you see failure. Where you see successes is when people focus on a use case where the return on investment makes sense. And then you have a big opportunity. And my fear is here is that when we start talking about, oh, well, we'll just make these robots that can do a whole bunch of things and people will buy them in their home and, it'll cook and clean and it'll, take care of their grandparents and do all these great things. But there's just so many unknowns in a unstructured environment like a home. And this has been why, to this point, the only successful product we've ever had in a home is a vacuum cleaning robot. That's the only successful robot that's ever been in a home is a vacuum cleaning robot. And that says a lot because there's a lot of things that people need beyond having their floors vacuumed. We do want potentially robots that could clean up the house and cook and all these other things, but it's complicated and it's costly. And until that changes, there may not be use cases in the home.
Yeah, absolutely. So try to think just beyond for new people to think beyond the the excitement and innovation factor, but in how do you really solve this problem beyond the emotional kind of excitement.
Right. I mean, one of the things that made the home vacuum cleaner successful, it was at, I don't know, when it first came out, $300, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'll expand upon this a little bit because this was really important to
Please.
me. Joe Engelberger is known as the father of robotics. His company, Unimation, had the first industrial robot that was installed in 1961. So that's how long robots have been around. Prior to that, I think the company was formed in 1954 or something. So we're about 70 years into this. I think it was in the early 90s. I could be off on the time frame, but there was a debate between the one of the founders of iRobot and Joe Engelberger. Joe Engelberger said people would be willing to reconfigure their homes to buy homes that would accommodate a robot that could be a servant and do all the cooking and cleaning. And they would be easily willing to pay $50,000 for that because they pay that much for a BMW. So you could have all these things being accomplished by a robot and people would do that. The co-founder of iRobot said, that's not the way forward. The way forward is with an affordable product that does one thing well, a single purpose robot, not a multitasking robot that does one thing well that people can afford. And so far, that view has been accurate.
Right. And it's been very difficult to, technically speaking, to build that kind of general purpose robot.
Right. And now these
right,
humanoids might be offering the potential of that, using all the new advances in AI. And maybe this is something that could happen down the road, but it's a big maybe in my mind.
Is it worth pursuing from your perspective?
Certainly in industry, certainly in warehouses, it's worth pursuing, absolutely. When it gets to homes, it's worth pursuing if you can get to a point where you really have something that is reliable and affordable in these multitasks. And I honestly don't know how quickly technology is changing. Are we going to be at that point in 5 years? I don't think so. I think it's more than a decade before we have a home robot like this that's multitasking, but it's certainly, worth pursuing.
And 10 years doesn't sound too long,
I think it'll be more
historically
than 10 years.
speaking.
Frankly,
Yeah.
I think it'll be more than 10 years before you have home robots that are humanoids. And I think it might be as long as 10 years before you have a whole bunch of them in industry. But I could be wrong on that. And this is the thing. There's a lot of skepticism, and I think it's healthy, but the way things are changing with AI and the way the humanoid form factor seems to be developing, I think I may be too skeptical.
Now, we live definitely in very exciting times where things are moving very fast, even for us that are very excited about bringing the future, feel like we can't really predict anymore how fast things are moving. Jeff, thank you so much for giving us your time and insights and wisdom to the Furhat community.
Thank you. It was important conversation, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Thank you.